Hello and welcome to the Buy, Sell, Hold Spotlight presented by Sports Car Market Magazine. I'm Darin Roberge. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also be sure to join in the conversation and share your thoughts by leaving us a comment below. Our guest today is Emily Lambert. She is Managing Director of the Cobra Experience in Martinez, California. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
For those who may not be familiar with you, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background?
Sure thing. So I have grown up in the world of Cobras. My dad has been a car collector / restorer since the mid-70s. In fact, literally, I've grown up around it. There's a picture of me in the museum as an infant sitting in the first 289 that him and my grandpa restored. So growing up, I polished chrome, I cleaned tires, I pumped lots of clutches and brakes to make sure that everything was working properly before we took it out for a spin. So grew up with the cars. My dad has collected lots of Cobra things over the last, 45, 50 years. So he wanted to make sure that it didn't just sit in the garage and no one got to see it and, put it into a museum, let the next generation actually get involved in all of these items and the cars. I mean, you can see the cars out there, but you don't see paycheck stubs and you don't see, the comparison of all the wheel options that there were in the 60s, which no one realizes there's like 12 in that short period of time in those few cars. So lots to look at the museum. We opened in November of 2014. We are a nonprofit museum and we are committed to the promotion, conservation, education, and preservation of the cars produced by Shelby American in the 60s.
It's certainly a fabulous facility for sure. Let's kind of start with the top and let's talk cars first. What are some of your featured and more significant vehicles that live there?
Sure thing. So we have one of two dragon snakes that were campaigned by the factory. So overall, they made 6. 2 were campaigned by the factory and 4 were sold to privateers. So we've got one of 2 of those. We have a King Cobra, CM 163, which is pretty cool. Just the history there. We have pretty much every year of the Shelby Mustang. We have the prototype Tiger. We also have 2 cars from the movie Ford versus Ferrari. So we kind of do the gamut of fun, but primarily the 60s.
I mean, certainly the golden era for Shelby and Shelby American and racing in general. There's more to the Cobra Experience than just the cars. You guys have some incredible things from the shop, including dynos and chassis and things that you wouldn't normally expect to see. And the way that they're laid out in the museum is really interesting too. It's almost like walking into Carroll Shelby's shop at various times throughout the course of the history of the company. Give us the rundown on some of that stuff, because that's really, I think, some of the more interesting things that you guys do have there is the kind of how the cars were made side of what Shelby was.
Correct. So yes, we have a whole shop scene. Like you said, the dyno. We've got a lot of like the boxes that they used out at the track to hold things. We've got the wagon that has a steel plate in it, because they use that specifically. I mean, it's an old like Red Ryder wagon. We've got, a lot of the tooling and where that all came from. One of the employees at the very end when the shop was closing down took it all, put it in a container, and it's been in a container for the last 50 years. And my dad and him struck a deal and we were able to acquire that to put in the museum for others to see. And for me, it brings the story alive. It's, you can hear about it all day long. You can read about it. You can even see it in Ford versus Ferrari, but standing there in front of the dyno or in front of tires that were from the era. And, it just, I don't know, it brings it alive. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it really makes it a real thing, especially for people that may or may not be old enough to really remember what it was like when those cars were active. And I mean, back to your Dragon Snake also, the paint job on that car is astonishing. It's like a bowling ball or a motorboat or something along those lines.
We call it the drum kit.
Yes. It very well could be the shell of a vintage drum kit, certainly, but you don't see those things when you're watching TV or YouTube or watching a movie. It's one of those things that really jumps out at you that you don't expect to see. I mean, there's the blue color that you see on so many Cobras is kind of a standard to a degree, but when you're up close to that car and you see that crazy sparkle on there, it really sort of brings things into perspective and makes things real. You guys have a very significant shop as well too, where you do incredible work on not only manufactured CSX, late model 4000 series, et cetera, cars, but also you bring cars back to life. You have an incredible collection of old bodies. Kind of talk
Yes.
to us about some of the other things that the Cobra Experience is involved in, aside from education and inspiration.
So the museum is one part, and then we have a separate business that does restoration. So primarily, I mean, if you go out and you're vintage racing and you have an oopsie with a wall and or another car, you bring it in and it gets fixed. I mean, it could be something as simple as, which we've had this happen. You're on a tour and somebody rolls into you. Well, when you're an original Cobra and you're thin aluminum, guess what? It's kind of a major issue. So, I mean, anything from real issues, you've decided you don't like the status of your car because it was originally, a narrow hip and now it's wide because somebody played with the fenders over the last 60 years. Whatever the case may be, we can take it and fix it.
And you guys do complete restorations basically from the ground up too. I was aware of a GT40 that you guys did basically from the ground up.
Correct.
So it's an extensive project, lots of parts involved. And I imagine it's one of those things that sort of creates a little bit of an insanity scenario that's both good and bad on either side, because having to track that stuff down is hard. So how do you go about finding the components, parts necessary in order to create some of these reworks, masterpieces, restorations, etc.?
Yes, sometimes it's literally impossible. Drew, again, my dad, has collected this stuff. I mean, the whole second story of the shop is just walls and shelves and drawers of original parts. So I can't say he's got everything because that doesn't exist. But a lot of times he can go back through and find the one-off thing, or, hey, this isn't 100%, but it's, 75, we can fix it the rest of the way. Or, there's eBay, there's Bring a Trailer, there's, he knows so-and-so had one of these over here because somebody else was talking about it. I mean, it's all word of mouth. There's a tight-knit group that kind of, I don't want to say hoards the stuff, but hoards the stuff. So you've got to know where to look.
Enthusiasm is what keeps this stuff alive for sure. So back to the museum, any upcoming projects, exhibitions, events that are notable that we should be aware of?
Well, now that we're heading into winter, things have kind of quieted down, but we just actually this past weekend had the third annual Shelby Spin. So we've made it so it's any Ford product. You don't have to have a Shelby to participate, but it allows us to kind of encompass all the people that come to the museum if they'd like to participate with us. It's a 2-day drive. We do under 500 miles, spend the night somewhere, so lunch, dinner, just fun with friends. So I think we had 22 cars on that, which was a perfect amount. We lost a couple. We got them back.
So let's talk the marketplace. The recent Shelby market has been insanely hot. Lots of big sellers crossing the block. Mecum did some astonishing numbers in Monterey on GT350s, GT500s, as well as RM Sotheby's did $1 million on a 289 Cobra, which for many we thought for years was an unachievable number for those cars. It's about time, in my opinion. So from your perspective on your side of the world and the people that you talk to, what's hot, kind of what's fallen out of favor? What's the direction of the Shelby market moving forward? Do you have an opinion on the 80s cars? Give us the rundown of the Shelby marketplace from your perspective.
Sure thing. So I would say the hot cars, just like you said, the GT350 500 situation, I mean, there were a very limited production of 65s, 562 cars. It's a Mustang race car. So those clearly are a high value item right now. Like you said, they've gone crazy. The narrow hip Cobra is another one that, again, only a few of them were made. So they seem to be really popping in the market, as well as the wire wheel 289. Kind of, I can't say that anything's substantially different than it's ever been. Those have always been popular cars. But yeah, it's awesome to see the Mustangs getting up there and getting some attention.
I'm starting to see references made to the Dodge pickup trucks and the Dodge Shadow thing from the 1980s. What's your opinion on that? Are those ever going to have a place in your museum, or what do you think's going to happen with those?
Well, our whole goal has kind of been to stay with the 60s in the future. I know I was just in Vegas a couple weekends ago with Shelby American, and we were talking a lot about Dodge and the other projects that Carroll had, because it wasn't just Ford and it wasn't just, that little bubble. They're around and they're finally starting to be recognized. I feel like that wasn't always the case. It was always like, oh yeah, that's that other thing. But just like he was a big fan of the next thing. So there's actually a recording of him talking about electric vehicles, which everyone, the Mach-E, there's been a lot of conversation, good and bad, on that subject. And we were talking about it, how he was into innovation. That was not a negative for him. And of course, everybody thinks, oh, well, he was all about horsepower and all about the engine and all about this stuff. Heaven forbid we do electrical car. That's just crazy. Well, no, it's not. I mean, he was always a forward thinker. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you kind of look at the progression of things, I mean, a front-wheel drive sort of semi-hatchback thing was kind of the next step, the next wave of the 1980s, and he was there. And candidly, I do think those are going to be collectible at some point. Those were not well-built cars. They were not well-loved. They will not work well cared for. And therefore, good ones are going to be hard to find, and it may be something worth watching moving forward. All this stuff costs money. We know this. Maintaining a museum is expensive. Preserving the future is expensive. So you guys do something every year to help fund this. And this year you've got something incredibly special that you're doing. Why don't you give us the rundown on your 1966 Shelby GT350H sweepstakes?
Yes. So we'll give you a little history on that too. We unknowingly chose to start a sweepstakes at the end of 2019, which, knock on wood, worked out really great for us during COVID, because we were closed for, I believe, 11 months. So obviously that's nothing going on. That's no events. Literally the world had died. So it actually helped us continue and be able to keep the doors open, because we were working on this sweepstakes. So this year we're giving away, or I should say this time, I'm giving away a 1966 GT350H. So it's a Hertz Rent-A-Razor, black and gold. The iconic livery that everyone recognizes. It does have an automatic. So it's a beautiful car. I've driven it a little bit, driven it in and out of the museum. So whoever that lucky winner is, cheers to them, because it's going to be a lot of fun.
I have not been silent about my love for the GT350H. So, automatic or four-speed, irrelevant. It's an awesome car either way. So how can people win?
Absolutely. So you can go to win@gt350h.org and make sure and enter promo code BSH for buy, sell, hold. And you get 25% extra tickets.
Good deal. Good deal. Listeners should definitely take advantage of that. So how does this help the museum, and where does the money from this go?
Yeah. Well, like I said, for COVID, it really kept us afloat. And moving forward, obviously, our focus is sharing the history with the next generation. So how does a museum keep current, with technology and making it so our younger viewers, participants, whatever you want to call them, engage with us? I've got the older group that can read a sign all day long, but that's not what's exciting to the younger generation. So it allowed us to upgrade some of those items. So the movie theater, we were able to upgrade our show. So we've got a 20-minute movie that goes with the museum that is just killer. My dad was in the professional sound industry, so needless to say, your seats rattle, you get blown in the face, and it's interactive. So we've been able to put a lot of work into that, because that kind of starts the history of the actual tour when you come into the museum. Our next project is recording video. So you can, scan your QR code and instead of somebody standing there, I mean, you could still have somebody stand there, but you can get your video and learn all about that specific car. We can even add pictures to it. Just make it, I don't know, more exciting. Cars are cars, but learning the story and, who sat in this car or who drove this car or who used to own this car, those kind of things, just, I don't know, take it up a notch. Again, it makes it come to life. So those are some of our current projects. Also, it's going to allow us to open more often. Right now, we're only open one Sunday a month. Our goal for 23 is to increase that substantially. So we're working on, I don't know, projects and ideas and trying to figure out how to engage more people.
That's what it's all about, teaching people. Obviously, the movie Ford versus Ferrari reignited the interest for a younger generation in these incredible cars. And now you guys are here to complete the story and close the circle for people. So it's very, very important indeed.
Yeah. Ford versus Ferrari was huge for us. We did a big event, but the people we were seeing come through the door was such a broad spectrum. And then COVID hit, which killed it all. I mean, we had a great 3 months. It was just incredible, which is unfortunate. But
the impact is still felt, however, and it's always interesting to me to have conversations with people that don't know anything about mid-century Shelbys, and then have them sort of reference the movie and something that was incorrect or added for dramatic purposes. The one I get all the time is do you know where the wrench is? And and my answer to that is usually it's made of rubber. It's probably in a prop trailer someplace, and they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, that's not real. So it's nice that you guys were there to sort of clean that stuff up for people a little bit and give them, obviously the movie gets them in the door, but the real story is almost more interesting than Hollywood's interpretation. So it's nice to be able to give people the real deal, I'm sure.
Well, and it is. I mean, it definitely, there were some Hollywood liberties there, which is great because it made it into a people movie. It also gave Ken Miles FaceTime that he has not been recognized for in the past, which is awesome. Because he was really the main guy, from early 60s to 66. So 100% Ken Miles. That was great. But yeah, having them come in and, okay, well, no, that's not really how it was. I remember we got to do a preview before the movie came out. And, there'd been a lot of, oh my gosh, why didn't they have Matthew McConaughey play Carroll Shelby? And, all this, I don't know, negativity around it. So I went to a screening, and Drew and my mom went to a screening, not together, separately. So we got out of it. I was like, well, what'd you think? And, it was all positives. It really, I was afraid it was going to be all racing, to where people, the common person wasn't going to be interested. But they did a great job making it into a people movie, having it feel good. It couldn't have been, I'm sure it could have been better because it could have been more historically correct. But then it wouldn't be a movie. No one would want to go see it. So gotta have
I enjoyed it. The person I watched it with, I kind of ruined it because, I kept pointing out that I knew where all the cars were in real life, both the ones from the movie and the ones that are real.
Yes.
But, it was still an enjoyable experience, and it's fun to watch people who have never seen it before watch it and kind of get sucked into the character's development. And that's due to Hollywood, certainly.
Well, and for us, we have people come in and, was Carroll Shelby really a person? He was really an actual person. Yeah, he was. And yes, what you saw in the movie there, some of that is valid. Some of it's not, and that's okay. But yeah, he was an actual person.
Okay, Emily, I like having people like you on the show who come from a different perspective and see the marketplace from a different angle than the average collector or dealer or auction company representative would see things. So floor's yours here. One buy, one sell, one hold. Let's talk Shelby's. Go.
Okay, yeah. One buy is going to be any 427 with good history. One sell, probably a late model Shelby, which I still hate to say that, but they just don't have the value there yet. And hold would be a 289 wire wheel Cobra. And again, my niche is so small. Obviously, I'm Shelby, and Shelby.
I agree with you kind of on all three. Right now it's a good time to do the late model ones. I think probably the last generation GT500s maybe a hold, but the wire wheel 289 cars, in my opinion, are the best iteration of the Cobra. And it's nice to see that people are starting to figure that out. And I expect values to rise based on that. So I think you're dead on the money with all of those things. Any final thoughts?
Come visit us if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area.
How can people learn more?
Sure. They can hit our website. It's cobraexperience.org. Like I said, right now we're only open one Sunday a month, the third Sunday. We do cars and coffee as well from March through November. And then keep an eye on our 2023 calendar because we've got some cool things coming up.
And of course, make sure that you enter the sweepstakes to win the incredible
Yes.
GT350H.
Absolutely.
I would like to thank Emily Lambert from the Cobra Experience for joining us today. To learn anything more about what we discussed here, be sure to pick up the latest issue of Sports Car Market magazine by visiting the link in the video description down below. As a reminder, if you enjoyed this content, please take a moment to like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay on top of future episodes. I'm Darin Roberge. Thank you for joining us on the Buy, Sell, Hold Spotlight.